Okay, today on the show, I'm joined finally due to a lot of technical difficulties on both our ends, which we won't get into, but it's been a hilarious couple of weeks trying to get this up and running, hasn't it?
Oh, crazy,
Yeah,
crazy technology like 2021. You're not worth a shit.
yeah. We'll blame bad broadband in Ireland, I think, in general on this one.
Yeah, I guess so anyway. I'm
Nothing
not
to do with
sure.
us. Nothing to do with us.
No. Two tech wizards here.
So I'm joined today by
Oh,
Mr. Jonathan O Dwyer again, and we're going to overlook and look back on WrestleMania 19, my personal favorite WrestleMania. I don't know if it's your number one, but it's up there for you as well.
oh, yeah. It's definitely like with most things in my life, I'm indecisive. So I kind of bounce between 19, 17, and 28 is kind of high up there as well for me then as well. There's a few, but top two anyway, 17 and 19. It kind of bounces between the two.
Yeah, 19, like, it was my favorite. Like, I had an awful lot of star power and kind of guys that were coming to the end of their careers as well, having matches. And also, it was Austin's last match, which we didn't know about at the time. Like, so to look back on it, like, it's a very interesting show. And then to have Limp Bizkit, my favorite band, performing twice on it as well, I think that was the deal sealer for me personally.
Oh, that was so, and that song is really underrated. The Crack
Crack
Addict song,
Addicts.
like
Yeah,
like that's a pity. Like that album never actually got released. I don't think.
they released an album about a year or two later called Results May Vary, and they never put it on the album, which I thought was strange because it was a great song.
Yeah, it was really good. But one point I'll make on Limp Bizkit as well is like people look at the Undertaker match against A-Train and Big Show as kind of like a downer. Like the match isn't actually bad if you go back and watch it. It's actually pretty good. But like the entrance makes up for it. That entrance is so badass. Like with Limp Bizkit playing him to the ring and the rev on the motorbike as he's going, and it was just it's freaking awesome. Like so that saved 19 for Undertaker. I think like that entrance is just badass.
If you rewind it back to the late 1990s and had that demonic Undertaker that was sacrificing Stephanie McMahon and having battles with Austin and stuff like that, if you would have told people fast forward, oh, Limp Bizkit will be singing him to the ring at WrestleMania 19, you would have fucking laughed your head off.
Oh, crazy, isn't it? And like
Yeah,
that's just a span of a couple of years. Like
yeah.
like 99, 2003. It's amazing. Like the way things can progress. Like, but yeah, fucking, and it worked. Like it like they fitted with Taker. I found like they because Limp Bizkit were a gritty band. Like and they fitted with the badass gritty type of character Taker had at the time. So it worked.
On Limp Bizkit, apparently it's Undertaker's favorite band and it's also Tom Cruise's favorite band. So there's a little fact and figure for you.
Oh wow, Undertaker and Tom, you broke up a little bit on me there, but
Yeah,
Tom Cruise and Undertaker's favorite band was it?
yeah,
You said, "Oh, Jesus, there's a correlation I wouldn't have put together."
yeah. Which we'll we'll
Right.
we'll kick into the pay-per-view a little bit anyway.
Yeah,
So it started off with Matt Hardy and Rey Mysterio for the cruiserweight title at the time, and it was pretty short match, but two big guys to kick off the show though as well.
yeah, it's a decent match as well. I watched that not too long ago. I can't remember what I watched it on. It might have been, I don't know, it must have been some kind of rewind show on the network or something like that. Like, but it's actually pretty good. And one thing that stands out from it is well, two things. Like Mysterio's gear, I think was based around was it the Flash? I think.
Yeah, the purple. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, the purple, yeah, and yeah, so that was pretty cool. But like Matt Hardy was so cool back then. The version one gimmick,
yeah,
oh, I absolutely loved that at the time. And like when he was trying to lose weight to become cruiserweight champion, training in the chicken suit and all that crap, like that was good. That was good stuff. Like he has a really good way of kind of reinventing himself, and I think that was probably him at his very best. Was the version one era, I think.
yeah. He had Shannon Moore, I think, accompany him to the ring that night as well.
Yeah,
Who was with him at the time, and he
yeah,
got
they were a good pairing.
he got the victory anyway. It was a very short match, only you think 6.5 minutes it went, but a good way to open the show, but I felt it could have went a bit longer though.
Yeah, probably. Like it had a good pace to it, so I suppose that was just a good way. I mean, there was a lot on that show. Like even on top of the matches, you had the Limp Bizkit stuff then as well, as we were saying, and then they had like the Miller Lite Catfight Girls and all that stuff then as well. Like, they had a lot of bells and whistles to that WrestleMania as well. So I suppose they were trying to just keep it short and sweet for that.
Before that Mania as well, they had a good Sunday Night Heat where they had John Cena come out and cut a promo as well on Jay-Z and stuff, but it never made it to the show, which was disappointing.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like he did it with the cutouts of who was it? Of who were the cutouts he did? I think he might have had a cutout of Jay-Z, Fat
Jay-Z
Joe.
and someone. Yeah.
Was a Fat Joe and what's the guy's name? The Mini Me guy. What was his name again? I can't remember his name.
Oh, Vern Troyer, was it?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd say my memory might be defeating me on that one. No, I'm not sure if he even did it, but yeah, I think he had a cutout of Jay-Z and Fat Joe, if I remember right. Like, but yeah, it's funny to think he's not properly even on that WrestleMania.
Yeah, because that was the Dr. Tugonomics. Like I thought they would have put him in there, like, but yeah, the Sunday Night Heat stuff. I remember watching it before that Mania, and I thought, Jesus, like this guy is really going to be big, but you'd never think he was going to be that big,
Yeah, like I mean, he had steam at the time, and like I really liked him during the Tugonomics days. But me neither. Like I knew him and Orton would be the next two top guys. I mean, you could see that even in early 2003. I think Batista kind of came out of nowhere, like his big ascension, later on, or in 2004. But like Orton and Cena, it was apparent like that they were going to be the next two top guys. But yeah, I don't think anybody saw Cena. Well, they definitely didn't see Cena apologizing to China for saying that Taiwan is a country. They definitely didn't see that back in 2003. You sellout piece of garbage.
Oh, yeah, his big moment didn't really come till 20, and he fought the Big Show in Madison Square Garden for the US title. And that was kind of the start of the acceleration for him.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, no, that was class. Like, he was really hitting his peak at that point. Like, that was super cool. Like, but yeah, for sure.
The next match was A-Train and the Big Show against The Undertaker. And, well, Nathan Jones was supposed to be a part of that match as Undertaker's tag team partner, but I guess they got cold feet on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as I know, that was pretty much the reason. Like, they didn't think he'd be able to handle it. And like they kind of, I mean, they did what they could. But if you go back and watch that, Undertaker works his ass off in that. Like, he does a leapfrog over A-Train, and like it's the match itself is actually pretty good. Like, Undertaker really works to make it work, and like he does the tombstone on A-Train at the end. Like, that's a lot of meat up on his shoulders and up on his bad knees and hips. Like, even at that point, like it's crazy to think in like between 99 and like end of 2002, Undertaker like was up and down on retirement, even back then. Yeah. And to think how long he went on after that, like, but yeah, he still put in a performance, even though that's a very low key kind of match. Like, he was trying to be the guy to bring up, some of the younger guys. Like, but yeah, it's a pity that it would have been interesting to see, how Nathan Jones would have done. I actually saw him in Dublin at a World Wrestling All-Stars show a few months before that. Yeah. November 2002 in at the Point Depot. A fucking monster of a man, monster. But yeah, it would have been interesting to see how that would have went down if he was in it. Like, but overall, it's actually not bad. It's kind of one of those little gems that you kind of have to go back and watch to appreciate. Like,
it kind of stood to him nicely with the streak as well, that he had a handicap victory over two huge guys. They didn't know then how big the streak would be, but when you're looking back on it and you see, he bit the Big Show and A-Train in the handicap match, like, that's impressive enough as it is as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And plus that's like that tombstone on A-Train nearly always made like the video packages for like when they were, showing the streak, like, like that fast clip, like of him going through all the guys, like, because that was an impressive that's an impressive visual, like, you know, him tombstoning that big old lummox, like, you know.
You can just see all the cameras flashing like when it happens, like it's great.
Yes, yeah. God, you'd miss those days, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that would that was a tough piece of work, I'd say, to get him up and down like that.
Gosh, like, because he was he had a very awkward build, like, you know, a really thick kind of, you know, a very weird center of gravity as well, like, so yeah, like, fucking hats off to Taker on that one, like, especially with his knees and his hips, like.
Just on A-Train, he was a very underrated wrestler. Like, he'd done a lot of good shit over in Japan.
Yeah, and really, really unique. Like, he was somebody that I always wanted to see. Like, I really liked him when he was in. Do you remember the X Factor? It was him, Sean Waltman, and Justin Credible. They had a brilliant entrance team. Loved it.
And TNA.
TNA, yeah, with the Test and Trish in as well. Yeah, fucking hell, another. It's funny, like, that's not a Russo creation either, like, you know. But no, that was a good one. I was completely oblivious to the double entendre of that name at the time as well, like, you know.
Sure, it was. Didn't Test refer to some of his fans as the testicles at one point?
Oh, you do? I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, these things from back then you'd forget, like, Jesus Christ. I don't know. How does Sky Sports allow half of that stuff?
I'm glad they did. I'm glad we came up in that era and we're not in the era of censorship and that kind of bullshit that I'd be sick of listening to.
Oh, yeah, me too. Like, I look back on that with, like, such fondness. Like, I mean, now everything is just so sanitized and so, you know, we could go on for another hour on that. Like,
that's why we're here. We're talking about the good old days. And the next match was three of, I think, the best female wrestlers, definitely of the last 20 years anyway. And it was Trish, Victoria, and Jazz.
The talent there. I mean, like, I think my favorite, probably my two favorite women's wrestlers of all time are probably Victoria and Molly Holly. I thought they were brilliant, and you can put Trish in there as well, but that was more just for, you know, the sake of looking at her, like, you know. But she was a good wrestler, like, you know.
No, she was.
I don't want to be a complete chauvinistic pig, like, you know, you know. But like, yeah, Jesus Christ, like, the talent, and Trish won back. I think, was it Jazz or Victoria was the champion on that? I think Victoria was.
Trish won the match then.
Yeah, she won the title back, like, and that was another iconic kind of visual as well, her with the belt at the end. But, like, yeah, you're not going to get a better combination. Like, a lot of people talk about, like, the women's evolution now and everything, like, with the likes of Charlotte and all Becky, of them. And Charlotte is, and Becky, like, Charlotte's probably the greatest, like, in-ring women's wrestler of all time, like, but and Becky's probably the best character then, but and a really good wrestler and everything. But I think in terms of an overall era of women's wrestling, I think it's 2002 till maybe 2004, 2006, somewhere along those lines. I still think that hasn't been topped, like, you know, Victoria, Molly, Trish, Jacqueline, Jazz, Lita, I mean, and they had some good feuds as well. I mean, the Trish Lita feud, like, that was iconic. Like, there was no movement back then. They were getting those positions because they were good. Yeah. You know what I mean? It wasn't this whole societal shift movement type of thing. They were getting it because they earned it. I'm not saying that the women now haven't earned it or anything like that, but, like, the women's evolution now kind of dovetailed with everything in society, you know, at the same time, like, so I think that's kind of overlooked at times, like, you know. It's like suddenly women became good wrestlers back in fucking 2015 or 16 or whatever it was, and that's bullshit. Like, you go back to those days, that was hot stuff. Like,
do you think when people talk about the women's revolution and things like that people like Trish and Victoria and that kind of get forgotten about? It's almost as if the reset button happened a few years ago with the likes of Charlotte and Becky and stuff like that. And I seen recently someone asked Triple H about another all women's pay-per-view, and he said basically that it wouldn't be what was the way he put it? He basically said it wouldn't be equality, you know, if we're going with one gender pay-per-views. I think basically he was saying it was all right to do it that one time, but there's no need to genderize pay-per-views, and I totally agree with him on that point.
Oh yeah, 100%. I do too. And like I think if you continue doing that, you're more tokenizing the women more than anything. Like, you know, I think it's saying the opposite of what they're trying to say in a
Yeah.
sense. Like, I think if you're going for like equality, then it should be, you know, equal opportunity on the shows together. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, that just tokenizes the women's division if you're just going to do that, like, you know. So no, I completely agree with him on that. And yeah, like the point like I was making a while ago, I think for some people there was a reset button, like all of this, like women's wrestling suddenly, you know, freaking began existing in 2015, 2016, whenever it was. Like, you know, I think if you go back, there's some serious quality stuff. I mean, there was a fair bit of sleaze in between then as well. Like, you know, that's, you know, you can't deny that. But yeah, you go back to a lot of the stuff that Trish did with Victoria and Trish and Lita, Mickey James, Molly Ivory as well as another one that's kind of overlooked as well. I mean, there was amazing talent like that really laid the groundwork, like, and I think they should get a lot more credit than what they do, for sure.
Yeah. The next match was for the SmackDown tag titles. Team Angle, Austin Benjamin versus Eddie and Chavo versus Benoit and Rhino, which is an interesting one as well. Forgot they were a tag team until I watched this back.
Benoit and Rhino, yeah. The main thing I remember about them is when Rhino turned on Benoit. Like, it was Vengeance 2003, and he comes in and he costs Benoit the US title against Eddie. Like, that's one of my favorite matches. I absolutely love that. But as for the tag match, I mean, that was more filler, I think, more than anything else. Like, it's like we don't really know what to do with all of these, so we just fling them in together. And, you know, I mean, Los Guerreros were amazing, like, back then. And or wait, no, I think Chavo was injured and Eddie was with Tajiri in that, I think, was it?
Yeah.
Or yeah. But yeah, I think that was more just kind of filler. I mean, there was no real jazz behind that, I don't think.
It was the last Mania that Eddie and Benoit were at before. Obviously, the next Mania then was 20, and they both had the titles.
Amazing, isn't it? What a difference a year makes. What a difference. I mean, that moment at 20, I mean, that's a whole other different kettle of fish. I mean, up to that point, I think, like, that was without a doubt. But even though in the triple threat with Benoit, Michaels, and Triple H, I was actually going for Triple H because that was the peak of my Triple H fandom back then, even though I loved Benoit. But I think it was pretty obvious that, you know, he was gonna win it at that point, like, you know, and I always end up going for the other person if, you know, the outcome seems kind of obvious, like. But yeah, that moment with him and Eddie at the end of that, I mean, that just at the time signified everything good about wrestling. Like, you know, they got those positions because they deserved it, like, you know, they'd earned it. And that moment is just absolutely amazing. So yeah, it is kind of funny to see where they were just a year prior, like they were just thrown in there, you know, and it didn't really mean anything.
Yeah. The next match on the card was absolutely fantastic. Should have been further down. Shawn Michaels and Jericho.
Oh,
that was some match.
Oh my God. And like the storyline, everything about that, like, it had such a good story, like the whole teacher student type thing, like, you know, with like, because Michaels was Jericho's hero growing up, and like that was all real. I mean, you can look at the footage where Jericho had his hair dyed and styled like Shawn, and, you know, he based a lot of his style around Shawn's style. And, you know, you had this real story built in, and they did some really nice stuff building up to it. Like, remember the Royal Rumble where they agreed, like, Shawn entered number 1 into the Rumble. So Jericho was trying to upstage Shawn. So he, you know, drew number 2. And then, like, Michaels is waiting for Jericho in the ring. And there Jericho comes from behind and low blows Michaels. It was like little things like that, like, were great. But the match itself is just a masterpiece. Like, I mean, and to think that was only, I think, what, Shawn's, you know, it's maybe his 4th or 5th match back since he'd been back. Like, you know, he hadn't had that many, and to have, I mean, it just says it all about how good. But look, Jericho's right up there as one of the greatest of all time then as well. So it was unbelievable stuff. It was the show stealer. It was probably the match of the night. Like,
It went on for I think about 25 minutes, and it was just all action from start to finish.
And speaking of the finish,
Yeah,
I mean, that was just the cherry on the cake. Like, oh, so good. Like Jericho goes in for the hug, and then they kind of separate. And he gives him the low blow, and like the way Michaels crumbles on him, it's like,
yeah,
why?
yeah,
Oh, so I did. Jericho just flings him like a piece of dirt,
yeah,
off
yeah.
his shoe. Oh, such good stuff.
I
Such
actually,
good stuff.
I actually at the time didn't see it coming.
No, neither did I.
Yeah,
Neither did I. I don't think. I
I
don't
thought
think I did anyway.
I thought they were going to come full circle for that kind of mania moment where they just kind of hug it out like, and that'd be it.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant stuff. I love Jericho's attire as well in that. Like that's one thing. Like I love the visuals of wrestling. Like, and I'm always into like the different gear and everything. That's one of my favorites. Looks that Jericho had. I thought that was really cool. The blue with the whole white, the kind of Jericho Tron type thing on it. Like that was
Yeah,
really cool. And Michaels as well. Like just the
traditional.
whole thing.
Michael's in the
It was just
traditional red.
yeah, and the look of the stadium, like that looked kind of, it had like the old WrestleMania vibe to it. I found like the Safeco Field thing, like it had a real sense of prestige and everything to it. So, like I just love everything about that WrestleMania. The ambiance to that is just, there hasn't been that many since that have captured the same type of thing. I don't think that one was special.
The entrance, the ramp down to the ring was huge.
Yeah, like there was kind of a twist in it,
Yeah,
even as well. Like it just, for it all just gave it such a cool vibe, and I think that probably adds to the atmosphere of the matches as well, because you have that long wait, of them making their entrances, and like I just remember the feeling of anticipation for Vince and Hogan as Vince was walking down. Like there was such a just a fucking palpable tension, like you could feel it through the TV.
yeah,
Because that match, the build for that match, I know I'm jumping ahead a bit, like
yeah,
god damn, the build for that was so good. Like the video package, like I love, that's one thing today that absolutely pales in comparison now to what it was back then, is the video packages. They were so good back then, like, and they're the shits now. Like I don't know, but actually, nearly the video package for every match on that card, like the one for Austin with the Crack Addict song and with Jericho and the Booker T Triple H one, it was just
yeah. We're going to go on to Triple H and Booker T because it's a kind of a match that I wasn't crazy about at the time. Like, and I did watch it back last week, and I don't know. There's just something about that. I think it was because of the time where Triple H was in his career. Like, this was probably one of the most, for me anyway, uninteresting paths in Triple H's career. Like, he was coming off a few matches with Steiner leading into this that weren't received very well. He was coming into this match, and everyone thought, all right, it's Booker's time now. Maybe it's just the result that I look back on and say,
I think it probably is. Because I mean, on the night, this is kind of before I hit my like big Triple H fandom. So I was on the Booker T side on the night. Like I was really hoping he'd win. And even like the feud with the two of them leading into it, I mean, it has its controversial elements, like looking back now, but it was kind of flat. It wasn't one of the more kind of anticipated matches on it, but it's a sentimental favorite for me looking back on it, like, because I just love the story and the execution of the actual match itself. Like, it's such a beautiful, like, I love wrestling when there's a good babyface heel dynamic to it. I don't really like when they got too into the whole shades of gray thing. I think wrestling needs that. Like, it needs that clear good guy, bad guy. Yeah, it needs that good, clear good guy, bad guy dynamic to it. I mean, that's what the business was always about. Like, the fans would cheer the good guy and pay to see them beat the bad guy. Like, and I mean, you can have shades of gray to it. Like, you can have, a sympathetic kind of anti-hero like Austin was, like, but at the same time, there still was a good versus evil dynamic there, because you had the tyrannical boss, and Austin was standing up for kind of the working man, like, you know, in a gritty, you know, like, you know, rough around the edges type way.
Yeah.
But like, there's still a good versus evil dynamic there. But like with Booker and Triple H, I just love that, like the way that's built, and you know, they injured Booker's leg in it, and then he hits like the Harlem Hangover, and you're like, you know, please come on, and he hits the scissors kick, sorry, and like Booker can't follow up on it, like because his leg is screwed up, and then you know his leg collapses underneath him, and Triple H just hits him with the pedigree, and it's just, you can feel the wind go out of the stadium, and I just love that, like, you know, when you can capture that, it's good stuff. But I think, you know, in retrospect, it should have been Booker's night. It was the night he should have been coronated. Like, but yeah, just from the execution of the match, I absolutely love it.
Jim Ross referred to it as a classic epic battle.
I'll go along with that.
Yeah. I don't know, like it still doesn't tick all the boxes for me. I don't know why. There's just something about that match. It's probably because of what was surrounding it, like with it's just followed that Shawn Michaels match.
Yeah.
The street fight is next, and that's in the middle, and maybe there's just too much going on for it as well. And plus the result on top of it.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But yeah, when like the way you described it though, like the way you described it with the wind going out of sails and all that, I totally get that. Like, and it's a good perspective of it as well.
And one other thing, just 1 second there, I forgot to turn off my freaking do not disturb.
Yep.
Yeah, the drawbacks of using your phone for these things.
Yeah,
but one last point on that match that I'll make is the commentary is so good in it. Oh, Lawler and JR are on rare form. I mean, some of it is a little bit like, some of it's a little, yeah. Like Lawler is pushing the racial boundaries. He's pushing the racial boundaries a little bit on it, like, but like some of it's just funny, like, you know, because like, well, I don't think, you know, see, everybody, like, you can make it about race, but I think he was playing more on like the fact that Booker was in jail at one point, like, because they brought that all into the storyline, like, and you know, he said like Booker T, the guy whose family portrait is a courtroom sketch. Jerry Lawler.
Some people hate the man. I think he's hilarious.
Oh, I love him. I love him. I know there's some, you know, kind of dodgy things in his past, like, you know, he seems to be a pretty settled man now, like, but as far as, you know, him as a character and everything, he's just absolutely amazing as far as I'm concerned.
Right, the street fight, Hulk Hogan versus Vince McMahon. What did you think about that?
Oh, love it. Like the build up, like that was one where, like, I mean, the match itself, like, it's actually pretty good, like, in terms of, like, you know, the execution of it and everything. Like, I mean, it was 10 times better than I ever thought it would be. Like, even back then, like, I've only would have been 13 watching that, 14 maybe. So like Vince pulls out all the stops, like, what a crazy bastard. I mean, he does the leg drop off the ladder to the announce table, and, you know, he's like, this actually illustrates how good Vince is, like, what a genius he is. Remember that spot, like, Vince is bleeding and everything, and Hogan's in the ring, and Vince goes to the outside, and he's getting the pipe or whatever from under the ring.
Yeah.
Remember that visual,
the look
of him coming up from the apron, with that, you know, fucking crazy look in his face. Like, so good. Like, you can say whatever you want about Vince, but like, he's a psychopathic genius. Like, you know, it was great stuff. And like, Hogan was on good form in that as well. Like, you know, he had a good bit of intensity. But what I remember more than anything about that is just the build up, the press conference, and Vince, you know, stabs him with the pin and gets him to sign the
his blood.
contract in his blood. Yeah. Like that's good stuff. Like, you know.
And they wasn't it later that year they ended up at the Buried Alive Survivor Series 2003 as well.
Oh, with Undertaker.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Vince had a rough year in 2003. Yeah. Jesus Christ!
But,
like he
was
going.
Piece
of shit out of
yeah,
him,
he was going for everyone that year.
He really, yeah. Do you remember he did the I Quit match with Stephanie? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord! What? That was only a few days before her wedding in real life. Like, what a crazy! I mean, he was definitely on the all, you know, the all GH at the time, like, you know, or as MVP calls it, the all vitamin T.
Yeah, he was in peak condition. Do you know what? The funny thing I found about that is, it's like the guy's producing WrestleMania, and then he's probably just leaving the production area, going down, having a match, getting the shit kicked out, and bleeding everywhere, then coming back, sitting down, and finishing the show. No doubt.
That's only great. Vince.
Yeah,
only Vince. You know, yeah, and there's absolutely no doubt about it that he was like, and meticulous. You know, yeah. I mean, I can only imagine how freaking meticulous and, you know, nitpicky he is on, you know, on the direction side of things. Like, so, like, yeah, there's only one Vince.
And do you remember that at the end, Shane comes down and he's lying down, and the middle finger comes up.
Oh, just brilliant. Just
there's so much things in that, like, isn't there?
And it's all about the nuances, like, and like, you know, just like wrestlers themselves could learn so much from that, like, or even like the one he had with Shawn as well. I mean, Vince is just a master at, you know, telling stories with the little details, and just the fact that we remember those little details. You know, yeah. I mean, do we remember, you know, the freaking triple somersault, freaking, you know, planche or whatever, some, you know, Akira Tozawa did 2 years ago on 205 Live? No, you know, but like, you know, you remember those things, like, you know, they're delved into your psyche, like, and, you know, that's what the business is about. It's about telling a story, creating emotion, and like Vince knows it better than anybody, like, you know.
he just came up a little bit short that night, Vince did.
Just a tad, you know, might have had a tad thing to do with Roddy Piper. Oh no, for Piper hit Hogan with the pipe. What am I saying? Forgot, yeah. And they had the imposter referee as well. Remember that? There's so many random things, you know. I'd forgotten about half of this, actually. It's kind of coming to me as we go along.
There's so much in this Mania, like, it's absolutely crazy.
Oh, just, yeah, it was freaking awesome. I forgot that Hogan was still using the what's it called again, Voodoo Child.
Yeah, he came out to Voodoo Child as well. Yeah,
like, you know, little things like that as well. But yeah, Hogan, they were both on top form. Like, I think that was probably Hogan's last, like, really good match. Like, the one with Michaels was good as well, but I think the one with Vince, just overall with the atmosphere and, you know, Vince's craziness and everything, I think it just about tops it.
And I think because people had low expectations for it as well, it really delivered, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point as well, actually. Yeah, because, like, even though that was, I think probably, like, looking back on it, I think that was the match at the time that I was most looking forward to, was Vince and Hogan, because the build-up was just so good. And Hogan's career was on the line in that as well.
Yeah.
And, like, back then, that still meant something to an extent, or at least when you were that age. Like, I was only 13 or 14. Like, so, like, you know, I like the thought of, like, you know, losing Hogan was like, oh, Jesus Christ, no, this cannot happen. Like, so I was like, you know, I was all in on Hogan winning, like, you know, so it really, I was so looking forward to that match. Like, you know, I remember just talking about it with friends in at school and everything. And, you know, God, they were good times. Like, you know, Jesus, they were good times, man. That's good stuff.
The next one, Austin and Rock, part 3 in the WrestleMania series, which we didn't know at the time was going to be Austin's last match. Good build up to this. Remember, The Rock was doing the Rock concerts, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And Austin was interrupting them, and then they had the Crack Addict team doing a nice little video package together for them. But if we hadn't known that it was Austin's last match, like, it would have put a whole different spin on this.
Oh, 100%. You know, and looking back on it, maybe they should have. I'm not sure. Like, I love that match. That was one of the first matches I remember, at least anyway, where they used their finishers over and over. Like, you know, it took 3 rock bottoms. Like, you know, that was one of the first times I remember seeing that. Like, and the way they did it, the way he, you know, he kind of pauses for that minute at the end before he delivers it, like, you know, and like I thought that was a really nice touch. Just the overall delivery of the match, it had kind of a grit to it that I really liked. I was on the Rock side of things going into. Actually, funnily enough, even though I loved Austin back then, I always kind of was a bit more on the Rock side of things back then, you know, which was bad because Rock always lost to Austin, like, you know, so this was nice at the time, like Rock finally won, like, you know, but and I loved the twist to the Rock's character at the time, the way he was bringing the whole Hollywood element into it and kind of trying to be a heel. Yeah, that was cool. And you know, he wasn't even really trying to be a heel. I mean, he couldn't be a heel. He was too entertaining, like, you know. And but yeah, there was kind of an emotion at the end when Austin was leaving the ring. I mean, we didn't know that it was going to be his last match, but I do remember thinking that something was a little odd. You know, Austin seemed, you know, there was an emotion that that I hadn't seen from him, and that's something that I do remember thinking at the time. Like, this seems a little weird. There's something that wasn't supposed to happen in this or something like that, like, you know, because there was an emotion. But even when you watch it back, it's a really emotional kind of a match to watch, knowing that whole backstory. Have you ever seen actually the what did they call it, the Mania of Mania documentary?
Yeah, the behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's really good. And like, they showed the clips of that match, and I think Jesse Ventura was narrating it, and like that really adds to the emotion of the whole thing then as well. Like, so that was a beautiful touch. But yeah, that I love that match. That might be I don't think it's the best necessarily Rock Austin match. I think that it probably is 17 is probably their best match, but I think that might be my sentimental favorite. There's just something about it, something about the atmosphere that I love. And it kind of dovetails into just that the event in general. I just love the whole atmosphere of that event. It just felt special.
It carries a lot of emotion, and you could see when you were watching that behind the scenes thing that the two of them were kind of talking to each other during the match to kind of get through it as well, which was nice.
Yeah, and that moment at the end then where The Rock like thanks him and tells him he loves him and everything, like, you know, it's a full circle story, like, because like Rock had played such a big part in making Austin. You know, I mean, he did the job for Austin so many times, like, you know, even going back to when, you know, they were battling over the Intercontinental title, like, you know, so their careers were intertwined, you know, very early on, like, and Rock was pivotal in Austin's ascension. And like, for Austin to do the job for The Rock on the way out, you know, it was a cool full circle story, like, when you look back on it, you know, through those lenses.
Yeah, so the main event then of the night, obviously, another one with big camera moments and stuff that always gets looked back on. It was Angle and Lesnar. It was a great match as well.
Yeah.
And both guys came out of that feeling a lot worse for wear.
Gosh, that's like, I'll never forget that moment of the shooting star press. Like, holy shit. Like, I mean, especially like, first instinct, I think John Cena said it in a documentary as well. Like, you know, the first notion in his head was that Brock was dead, and that was, I just distinctly remember that in my head. Oh my God, he must be dead! Like, you know, holy shit, it was so crazy. Like, I loved that. I mean, I was such a big Brock fan at the time. Huge. I think like my Brock fandom kicked in at Survivor Series when he had the match with the Big Show. From there on, like, I was a huge Brock fan, and still am to this day. He's still like, he's in my top 5 wrestlers of all time. Like, just think he's an absolute phenomenon. And like, that had such a cool atmosphere to it as well. Like that felt, you know. After following all of those stars, like, you know, Hogan, Rock, Austin, Michaels, Jericho, Taker, and everybody, and all of those prestigious matches that event had, like, Brock, this was his first WrestleMania.
Yeah.
You know, how crazy is that when you think back on it? Like, it's absolutely fucking crazy. And like, it's only Angle's 3rd year in the business, and they're the main event of WrestleMania, and Angle's neck is broken and everything. You've all of this other baggage to it, like, but like, they carried it so well and told an old school wrestling story where the match gradually build bit by bit. You know, they start off with the old school chain wrestling and it works its way up. and it was hard hitting stuff as well. Like, you know, even with Angle's neck injury and everything, they still beat the shit out of each other, even aside from the shooting star press and everything. So they pulled it off. But yeah, the shooting star. Whew,
Angle was the first person to kick out of the F5 ever during that match.
Whoa, I hadn't thought about that actually.
Yeah.
Jesus. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that was pretty big at the time. But there was a lot of those kind of close finishes in that pay-per-view in general. Like if you go back to the other match with like how many rock bottoms and stunners did we see in the Rock Costa match, you know? Yes, it was kind of a pattern for it.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Like that shooting star press, like where did it come from? Because we had never seen that. Like probably I wasn't watching a lot of wrestling on the internet back then, and even on YouTube and stuff like that. Probably people in America were, and he's been known to do the shooting star, I think in FCW he done it a few times and things like that. But I was totally shocked when he done it. Were you?
Oh yeah, no, I had never, like, I was in a WWE main roster, you know, bubble. Like I didn't see any, you know, OVW or FCW or whatever it was back then. Like I didn't see any of like our indie stuff. I don't think we get I think it was later on that year actually that we got the wrestling channel over here. Yeah. And, you know, some of that stuff started filtering in, like, you know, so I'd never heard about him doing the shooting star press in OVW before. Like, so like, yeah, because I was wondering what the hell when he went to the top rope, I thought he was just like going to do a splash or something like that. Yeah. Like, and, you know, like, what? You know, it was just crazy. That was one of those just jaw-dropping moments. Like from just the fact that he did it, I just remember the jump to begin with, like, you know, him jumping and just going like that, and then the landing, and it's just like, ugh! Yeah. You know what I mean? It was just like it was a double whammy of, you know, holy shit, like, and yeah, if it was anybody else, they probably would be dead. I mean, like, oh Christ Almighty.
After the match, he didn't know where he was. Like, gave him the belt, and he's just kind of in the ropes like this.
Yeah, and even when you're watching it, it's pretty apparent. Like, you know, he's dazed and confused. Like, but what a war! Like, you know, it's just, I mean, it's kind of ironic in a sense. Like, you probably have the two most decorated, you know, for lack of a better term, you know, real athletes or whatever, or, you know, fighters and things like that. Like, you know, with those kind of amateur wrestling pedigrees and with those pedigrees and everything, and like, you know, they're in the main event of WrestleMania and they just end up absolutely battered to hell after it. Like, you know, there's kind of a weird irony to it, but yeah, I mean, you're not going to see many more physical ones than that in a WrestleMania main event for sure.
Yeah,
I kind of way to cap it off.
Yeah, I actually thoroughly enjoyed kind of looking back on this because there's so much stuff in it. You know?
Oh, massive! Like especially the Vince Hogan one. Like that's one where you just think back and.
Yeah,
there's so many little things, like, and
I
think, even in the Jericho Michaels thing, like one thing that sprung into my head, didn't, like, after he shoved Michaels after low blow, did he spit on him as well?
I think so. Yeah,
I think he did. I wish I'd watched this again over the weekend before this. Now, memory's so bad. I watched it the week before last, but. I think he did anyway, or as he was walking out of the ring, he spit back at Michaels or something like that, and he gives the what for to the crowd. Just little things like that are brilliant. Like, he had some heat, you know. Jericho had heat. He could get heat like back then, you know, and you know, that was him at the top of his game. Like, you know, I mean, there was, I think. Was it 2009 where he had, you know, that really serious heel character and where he was feuding with Michaels again? I think that was probably Jericho at his very best, but up to that point, that was definitely Jericho at his best. Like just that night, I think that was, you know, his very peak. Like, you know, he was, you know, people give Michaels, you know, a lot of the bulk of the credit for that, and I think that's kind of unfair. I think Jericho's all there for everything on that, and with yeah, he did. Like, in Michaels, you know, he was only back, so like you have to give maybe the bulk of the credit to Jericho in some senses on that, like, you know.
Yeah. So what would you give the pay-per-view out of 10 to wrap up?
Oh man, I give it a straight 10 out of 10. I'm not going to play any Dave Meltzer stupid fucking games that give it like a 8.4 258 or any shit like that. That's a straight 10 out of 10. Look, the only thing that was a slight downer on it for me was the fact that The Undertaker didn't have a more prominent match.
Yeah.
That was always, I think if he did, it would have been probably without a doubt my favorite. I think the thing that gives 17 a little bit of an edge for me is the fact that Undertaker had such a prominent match in it with Triple H, like, and the fact that they're two of my favorites then as well. Like, I love that match.
Yeah.
So, but still, 17 and 19 are both 10 out of 10s for me. Like, I just absolutely love the two of them. Like, you know, there's not too many WrestleManias that square up to them at all. There's very few that come to mind, only 20, maybe 28, 7. There's probably a few others, maybe 10. But yeah, 10 out of 10 for 19 for me. Absolute cracker.
Brilliant. Sure. We'll see if I'd give it a 10, obviously, but I'd be biased. It's my favorite Mania, so
yeah,
I'd have to. Limp Bizkit just takes it from a 9.5 to a 10 straight away for me.
Absolutely. I'm not going to argue with you there at all.
And sure, we'll catch you for the Survivor Series 2003 review featuring Limp Bizkit as well in a couple of weeks.
Oh hell yeah! I'm down for that. Man. Yeah.
I just kind of put you on the spot there, but we'll do it for the crack.
We will.
Ambulance matches, buried alive matches, Triple H and Goldberg. A lot going on there.
I that's another sentimental favorite. Like, and again, that's another one with the atmosphere, and the song adds so much to it then as well. Like, so yeah, that'll be an interesting one.
Thanks a million, man.
Thanks for having me. This was fun, man. This was brilliant. All right, take care, man.